And now we have Alan Johnson's plan to teach Britishness in schools. I'll take a breather there. So, Johnson explained what he meant by Britishness in a BBC radio interview in January as values we hold very dear in Britain: free speech, tolerance, respect for the rule of the law. Well, in what way, I'd like to know, are these values that are not held by the peoples of other countries? Terry Eagleton, Professor of English Literature at Manchester University, wrote about the ludicrousness of such a policy in an article in The Guardian. There are no British values, he said, nor are there any Serbian or Peruvian values. No nation has a monopoly on fairness and decency, justice and humanity. The basic moral values of the average Muslim dentist who migrates to Britain are much the same as those of a typical English-born plumber. Neither is likely to believe that lying and cheating are the best policy, nor that they should beat their children. The Times in January reported the views of students from a West London school. The report said that, to the pupils, Britishness is not black and white. It is an ever-shifting, sometimes confusing mix of colours, and not something, despite Alan Johnson's new plan, that can be easily taught. It's something you feel, you identify with, little things, values, says a group of 14 and 15-year-olds. This is another example of the government making policy without talking to those it would most affect. I want an education system that values diversity and accepts my right to support Tottenham Hotspur, to support France in the European Cup, to support Brazil in the World Cup, to support India in cricket, to support Kenya in the Olympics, and to support England in the Ashes. So, I certainly don't pass Tebbett's cricket test, but none of my affiliations make me a less valuable person or less committed to being part of this society, but they do make me a global citizen. I have no doubt that for some, behind notions of what it means to be British stands the shadow of racism. For them, this is not about integration, participation, and pride in the country in which you live, but more about failure to assimilate, or indeed, who should be here in the first place. To demand that people conform to an imposed view of Britishness only fuels that racism. We mustn't forget that racism is not always overt, but is multifaceted, often subtle, and sometimes without malicious intent. All too often, racism is used to scapegoat individuals or groups by those who want to cover up their own shortcomings, inadequacies, and prejudices, including some of our own politicians and political leaders. We need to embrace everyone, regardless of colour, creed, or where they hail from. We need to respect their history and recognise their culture. Teachers have a vital role to play in this process, and drawing upon the experience of others, our union must give a lead in developing a fairer and just society.